Hi everyone, welcome back. Had to do one more of these for the moment, especially in radians, when it becomes a little bit of a different trick. There are so many things I think of where I could make more and more examples, but no one wants that many. So here we go. Now, I can also make it trickier if I say I want the answers between minus pi and pi. So what we're doing then, we're talking about minus pi, so there's 0, so we're going back to minus pi, we're looking at answers there, and we're looking at answers back over here. And if I went to a sine graph, and I just did a sine graph, or cos graph I mean, between minus pi and pi, it starts at 1, and it goes down to 90 there, and it goes down to 180 there. Now still automatically going to talk in degrees, especially when most people watching this are probably not really used to radians. So there's pi and there's minus pi. But I need to try to get people used to radians and give you a bit of a go at it. So let's see what happens with this question here. So we're looking at the whole graph is going to be moved not to the right by pi on 3, but to the left. Now, I always talk about the inside. Whatever's on the inside is about the horizontals. Whatever's inside the bracket under the control of the x is inside is going to do horizontal. So it's either going to move plus pi on 3 or it's going to move minus pi on 3. And the big thing I always love to talk about is the fact that insides do the opposite of what we expect. So it's not going to move right pi on 3, it's going to move left pi on 3. So from your point of view watching, it's going to move that way, pi on 3. But first of all, we need to get this to say just cos. So I've got to get rid of that plus 3, and I've got to get rid of that 2. Now a lot of people are okay, they just go take 3, do it in their head, and they just go 2 cos x plus pi on 3 equals 1. Now if you wanted to go take 3, you could. Between the 2 and the times, between the 2 and the cos there's a multiply times. So I go divide 2, could have done it in your head, most people would. X plus pi on 3 equals a half. But I keep thinking of those who's struggling with this. Now, where does the cos graph, forget about all this for a moment, where does a cos graph equal a half? And you can look over here and you can say there's 90 degrees, which is pi on 2, and you can say there it is there. So there's a half there, and there's a half over here. My diagram's a bit rough, but you can see with a slight where we get it from. Now, instead of looking at the graph, which some people prefer, I find most people prefer what I'm going to do up here. Most of you probably already know it. This is a method of being able to, instead of drawing graphs, you can look at this and get all the answers from here. Let's have a look. We need the cos to be a half, so that's going to be positive. I haven't done negative in these last couple of videos. I probably should, but it's getting too many. So we want the cos to be positive. So cos is positive here, cos is positive there, cos is negative there, and cos is negative there. So that tells us that sine is positive there and tan is positive there. So let's look at the graph. So what are we going to have? We're going to have between 0 and 90, cos is going to be positive. And if we go 0 to minus 90, cos is also positive. But if we go past that to minus 180, it goes back to negative again. So the cos graph here is not positive. So that's why it says T for tan. Tan is positive in that quadrant, but sine and cos are negative. Let's have a look at it and see what we've got. So we know that we're wanting cos to be a half. So how do we get cos to be a half? So if I said sine 30, there's a half. Most people memorise and start with sine 30 as a half. So if that's 30, over here is 60. So the cos of 60 is a half. Now of course we're not talking about 60, we're talking about radians. What fraction is 30 over 180? It's a sixth of 180. What fraction is 60 over 180? It's a third of 180. So we're talking about cos of pi on 3 being 1 on 2, which is your adjacent on the hypotenuse. Let's go back over here. So the x plus pi on 3 will equal a half when we're using an angle of pi on 3. Now that's, so one of our answers is pi on 3. So if I go back up to here, if you need to think of degrees, 0 degrees, 90 degrees, 180, of course that's pi on 2, which is over here is pi on 2, and that's pi. And if I go back the other way, there's minus pi on 2, and there's minus pi. And if we're talking about degrees, so that's minus 90, that's minus 180. So we're talking about pi on 3, which is 60 degrees. So if you want to think about it as 180 divided by 3 is 60. So we're talking about up here at pi on 3, which is 60 degrees. Means we're also going to talk about down here, minus 60 degrees down there, or just 60 going down. So that's going to be minus pi on 3. So there's our two answers, pi on 3 and minus pi on 3. And you've always got to be careful. Sometimes when you're adding or subtracting, you lose an answer or you gain an answer. Let's have a look at the next possible answer to this one here. So I've called that pi on 3. If I go away all the way around the circle, I've got an extra 2 pi. So I'm going to add 2 pi to that. And then what's happening when we're talking about thirds? How many thirds in 2 pi? Let's have a look at it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you can always talk about 2 pizzas and you've got 6 thirds. So all we're doing each time, we're going to add 6 thirds. If we're talking about quarters, we'd be adding 8 quarters. If we're talking about fifths, we'll be adding 10 fifths. So if I add to this one here, the big one, pi on 3, I end up with 7 pi on 3. And I go, well, let's have a look what happens with 7 pi on 3. So what do I have to do? I need to now get rid of this pi on 3. Let's have a look what happens. So this one here would end up being pi on 3, take pi on 3 is 0. This one will be minus pi on 3, take another pi on 3, minus 2 pi on 3. And that's okay, that's within 0 to minus, well actually minus pi to 0. And the next one, if I subtract pi on 3, I end up with 6 pi on 3, which is actually 2 pi. And 2 pi is too big, so we're not going to count that one. So there's our two answers. Now if you wanted to check to see what happens, it's a bit weird having it being 0. Let's have a look what it would become. It would be the cos of 0 plus pi on 3, and does that equal a half? And most of you would know automatically that the cos of pi on 3 is a half. So the cos of pi on 3 is 1 and 2, which is a half. And you can check the other answer as well. Oh, I hope that helps. If I think of more crazy ones to put up, I'll think about that one day. Thanks for watching. If you're enjoying it, please let your friends know. And if you want to support me, main thing is press subscribe, but like apparently helps a lot too. See you in the future. Bye for now.